Hey y'all, welcome to the Healing Space Live and Online Chats with Roxanne and Rhonda, the podcast where guests will share information and research on self-love, living a wellness-filled life, how to heal from traumatic events, and more. This podcast is sponsored by Healing Hearts and Minds Publishing, LLC, a new company that publishes books that promote self-love, healthy relationships, avoidance of unhealthy relationships, and much, much more. Check out their first publication, Unhealthy Relationships, Let's Stop the Madness, a guide for those in unhealthy relationships and for those who want to help them. Written by first-time author and co-host of the Healing Space Live and Online, Roxanne Elizabeth Epperson. Visit Amazon.com to purchase the paperback or ebook. Enjoy the show. Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of the Healing Space Live and Online Chats with Roxanne and Rhonda. If this is your first time joining us, we hope it won't be your last. We meet every Thursday, we record every Thursday, and in the last Thursday of the month, we have a live panel discussion, so we really hope you would join that as well. And we're hoping that you would become a warrior, and that's a WAAR, all caps, IORS, because if you become a part of that community, we will now be able to have communications with you, because we're saying, if you can give us some feedback about this podcast, if you have any questions about anything we ask, if you're a part of our private community, you'll be able to join that. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to talk about domestic violence headlines in the news. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rhonda.
Thank you, Roxanne. As always, we are glad you are here with us this evening, and we are glad to be here with you. This is such a very important topic, and we know that if people like us continue to bring light to this topic, we're going to continue to help people heal from domestic violence and intimate partner violence. So that is always a major focus and point of chats with Roxanne and Rhonda. Yes, we talk about other topics. However, we're always going to have a focus and come back to this being the heart and soul of what we talk about. So I just want to give a warning that some of what we're going to say this evening is can be triggering. This is not an easy subject. We always say that. We always like to lead in with saying that. It's not an easy subject, an easy topic, and we know that. So it's only fair that we let you know that this evening's topic may be triggering. You may need to turn it off at some point, maybe come back and listen to it a little later. We hope you do listen to it because we believe that the healing is in the process. It doesn't happen overnight. It is a journey, and you are allowed to be anywhere on that journey you are right now. That is also a message to those who work with people who live with intimate partner violence, whether you work with children, adults, or both. This message in this podcast is always for people who can help others, and if you are going through it yourself, if you're living with intimate partner violence yourself. So, Roxanne, I just want to read a couple things to you. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So here we go. I found this article from June 24th, 2021. Most of what we're going to talk about this evening is from 2018 through 2021. Maybe 2016 might creep in there a little bit, but mostly 2018 to 2021. This headline from California reads, "Hey police, man kills California cop responding to domestic disturbance. A suspect in a domestic violence disturbance fatally shot a California cop while saying, 'Hey, police,' as he opened his front door." And it says that the video is very graphic. So it gives the warning right then before somebody was to look at it that it is very graphic. It says that the footage that was released by the Stockton police shows that the instant Lance Lowe, 30 years old, shot the officer Jimmy INN, as the cop responded to a residence on May 11th for report of domestic disturbance. A caller told police a woman was bleeding and appeared to have been assaulted. As I read that article, and I'm not going to read the whole thing now, but as I read further into that article, you discover a couple other things. You discover that the woman actually fled the scene before being answering any questions for the police. It did say she later cooperated and gave the police information. Something very hard to even think about is the impact of intimate partner violence on children, and we'll talk a little more about that in this episode. However, this same man was holding his 8-year-old son. His um, the police officer, a second police officer on the scene, was pleading with him and asking him, "Please let your son go." The little boy, as the article did say, that Freer, the other officer, briefly went back inside to let the child go and said, "Let the child go," as he held his 8-year-old son in the front yard. Lowe then started to strangle the boy while refusing to comply with Freer, the second officer's commands, according to the footage. So when they watched the footage, they could actually see, and I didn't watch that, I wouldn't dare, but as they watched the footage, you could actually see him holding and strangling the little boy as the second police officer was pleading for him to let go. He was eventually shot and killed as well. Some other headlines. This is regarding the pandemic time last year. This headline says, "This isolation is a tactic. Experts expect the rise of domestic violence cases amid the stay at home order." And I can pause right there to say everything that was expected did happen, as in there was definitely an increase in domestic violence, which obviously led to a decrease in phone calls. Domestic violence programs around the city of Pittsburgh, around the surrounding counties of Allegheny County, and statewide, all were able, most programs, I'm pretty much sure, if not all, most programs in Pennsylvania and other states were able to stay open amid the pandemic and to offer some form of support and help for people living with intimate partner violence. Another headline reads, "Man arrested after attacking girlfriend with screwdriver." As you read a little more into that article, the, fortunately, the screwdriver wound was superficial. However, she had allegedly been stabbed many times before. This one was right here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. For those listening in Pittsburgh and for those listening around the globe, we welcome you as always. However, this one was here where we where our podcast is from, and it reads, "A heartbroken mother, murdered Pitt student's family gathers in Harrisburg to push for a protection from abuse reform." Those of us in Pittsburgh can remember that a young Pitt student was murdered in her Oakland apartment by her boyfriend. Domestic violence awareness. Lawrenceville woman shares story of survival after ex-boyfriend breaks into her home, stabs her 12 times. Listeners, that was the story of the survivor. As hard as this is, as often as Roxanne and I share and talk about intimate partner violence, as much as we realize and say this is really hard to listen to, hard to talk about, and certainly hard to live with, people do survive it. You can get free from an abusive, controlling relationship. As we said in the opening, it is a process, it's a journey, it's not an event. It doesn't happen just overnight where you're like, okay, that's enough. It's a process, it takes time and planning. However, there are many programs with a myriad of services to offer to help you get freed from that type of relationship. The last one I'm going to read right now says, Pittsburgh police, man arrested in 24-hour domestic crime scene. 24 hours they were there trying to arrest him. I'm sorry, I said that's the last one. This is the last one. Now I'm just going to share this one. West Virginia man. I didn't want it all to be Pittsburgh. West Virginia man arrested and charged with arson, burglary, strangulation, and escape after domestic violence incident in Armstrong, West Virginia. So, um, I'm sorry, in Armstrong is a West Virginia man who was in Armstrong, Pennsylvania. So I don't know, Roxanne. Any comments? Any thoughts before we move on? I have a couple others, but before we move into any of those, any thoughts?
Any of those. I had one that kind of relates to one of those that I wanted to talk about a little bit. And the headline on this one is Home Isn't a Guarantee for Survivors Fleeing Domestic Abusers During COVID-19.
Mm.
And the subtitle is Survivors of Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Experience Housing Insecurity at Disproportionate Rates. And as a direct result of the violence they've endured, the pandemic has made it unimaginably worse. And what I liked about this article, this article is about a young woman who my heart aches for her. She has 4 children and she has moved 10 times
Mm-hmm.
to flee her abusive husband. This was 10 times in 2017. Just in 1 year, she moved 10 times. So, how is my thing is, how does he keep finding her? And she keeps moving, and the sad thing is now she's married. She's remarried, and now her just this article was on June 2021 this year. She has to move again because he has found her again, and she's married.
Yeah. Wow.
And her husband, now he has to give up he's going to leave and go with her. What kind of crap? What the heck is going on? I remember I was in this program years ago, and a young lady, when I forgot, she lived in Massachusetts, and she was going to DC for an event. And the person who abused her, I'm learning this new language from Rhonda instead of calling him the abuser, the person who abuses. He put a tracking device on her car, and he called her and said something about that dress, the color of the dress she had on, and where she was going. So she was devastated. But I'm just wondering, do you have any resources, or do you know in your line of work how he might be able to keep tracking her?
Yeah. I think just as you just said, there's several ways that I have in my work that I have heard about it. But one, just as you just now said, putting a tracking device, because it is, unfortunately, it is so easy to put a tracking device on telephones and on vehicles and in pocketbooks. Just pocketbooks, that's such an old word.
Yeah.
And on purses, but just to track somebody nowadays is so easy to do that it is it's absolutely scary to think about how that people can really be tracked. I think what really is being able to find them. I know someone who actually was able to find the device, and then that becomes evidence when you can take it into court. That can become evidence. You always have to say can, because when it comes to court, a good attorney on this side, a better attorney on that side can always turn things around. However, in this particular case, they were able to use that as evidence in the case. In that same case, even though this person had fled, the relationship was like just as you were reading in the article, was in a different, not married, but in a different committed relationship, and the former abuser put floodlights on facing her house. Put floodlights so that anytime that any motion happened in that house, and it was connected to his television or his device, his mobile phone, or some kind of way. When that lighting went off, he got an alert and was able to watch any motion that was going on. So there's been so many different ways. I'll never forget being in the classroom several years ago with high school students, and this is when cell phones were just getting as popular as they were, particularly for high schoolers. And I remember sitting in the classroom talking about teen dating violence. And a student came up to me afterwards and said, while I was in the class teaching, she got a text message saying, describing what she was wearing, just like the article you're just referring to. And this is like a 10th, 11th grader. She's like, he knows what I'm wearing. How does he know this? You know. Now, of course, some other tactics that abusers and people who use power and control use is through other people. You know, they convince other people that they are a good person, that they really are in love with this person. You know, there's so many tactics and so many ways that they do it. So someone could very well say, you know what, I really want to surprise her, and tell me what she's wearing today because I'm going to do this or that. I'm going to get some flowers that match what she had. So many tactics. And of course, again, I did say her because, and I always say, we know intimate partner
Mhm.
violence happens in every relationship that we think about. So it definitely does happen to women. And you hear me say that often because
Mhm.
statistically, when you look at the statistics, over 85% of the calls that are made by women reporting intimate partner violence. So yes, men are also impacted. The statistics says 1 in 4 men suffer physical violence. You know, I always catch myself on that though. Physical violence and ongoing intimate partner violence, the dynamics of ongoing intimate partner violence are different.
Mhm. Mhm.
So if a survey asks a male to fill out a survey, and in this survey it asks, "Have you ever been physically assaulted by your intimate partner?" And the man checks yes. Then you can come up with a statistic that 1 in 4 men. I never want to say that men don't get abused. I know it is true. I
Mhm.
do want to say that it's. I do want to highlight that this is a crime largely perpetrated against women and against trans women as well. So I just really want to say that I don't want to offend anyone. Somebody listening may say, well, my son or my
Mhm.
nephew. I understand. I do understand and I do agree. So when I use my examples, it is largely based on the statistical report, especially when we're reading things like these kinds of headlines that talk about and show where women have been murdered or severely harmed, like stabbed 12 times, that this again is largely a crime perpetrated against women. So just wanted to share that. So did I answer your question? I gave you a really long
Yeah,
answer.
yeah, yes, you did. I'm glad you. I'm glad I asked it too because I learned a lot. Yeah, because you're talking about the tracking devices. If you don't know it's there, so because that's what I was thinking. How did he continue? So maybe he had a tracking device on her car and she never knew it, or like you said, in some
Yeah.
item or whatever, you know. But yeah, so yeah, you definitely answered my question, and I think you gave some good advice for those listening as well. So I was just scrolling through. They call her Angela. That's not her real name, but
Okay.
she says that the day he was arrested and charged is the day me and my children ran. We've been running ever since. And her
Yeah.
children went to 3 different schools last year, and she talks about how it breaks her heart that she has to keep changing and they have to keep um, kids, a new kid on the block to the school, that could be traumatic for the children, and and bonding, making friends and stuff. They're not able to do so. It's really fascinating to me that now her husband is involved in the running. I've never heard that one before. I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
that's deep. So so I'm just scrolling through. I just highlighted a couple things that just kind of stuck out to me in this article. But there's and I cannot pronounce this woman's last name. Her first name is Julia. She's an attorney and lecturer at Harvard Law School, and she founded what's called Housing Justice for Survivors Project at Harvard's Legal Services Center. And I wanted people to be aware of this project because it helps women who've been victims of violence be able to pay their rent. Because sometimes women are being evicted behind this person's behavior. They're damaged, they damage the people's property. The neighbors are sick of it. The police are called there all the time. And now this woman is losing her home. Even though I did read in this article that um, even though the Violence Against Women Act was not passed by Congress last year, the housing piece is still there, which prevents people from being evicted. but then it didn't make any sense because then I scrolled down and it talked about how uh, it says like in some areas like Philadelphia, there are protections that allow survivors to break their lease without punishment if they are experiencing domestic or sexual violence. But those protections are the exception, not the rule. So why is it not the rule? I mean, you just told me in this law that I can't be evicted, but so now why is it just only some places are doing this or following this rule? I don't know. Do you know anything about this particular piece
I'm, s-
of
I,
housing?
I don't. I'll have to do more research on that because I don't know. I know there at one time, public housing wanted to evict um, victims of intimate partner violence,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll say collectively, the domestic violence programs went and brought that to their attention, and that was denied. And that you can't just evict one or just say that she can not ever get housing again. However, then again, there's a lot of way manipulations happen that the family can end up being taken and removed from a list and never being allowed to come back again. So that can be another way that abusers abuse as well. And I did use the term abuses, but as well
Yeah.
as people, another tactic that they use for sure. I'm aware of cases from someone who told me, share this with me, where um, the person who uses power control, he actually put the apartment in the victim's name, but she wasn't living in it. He was living in it. So when it was time for her to get public housing, she couldn't get it because allegedly there was already one in her name. You know,
Wow.
so it reaches to heights that you can't really imagine or think about because it makes me say, well, how was he able to do that? But if you've been in a relationship, and we think about relationships, 5, 7, 10, 12, 15 years, we've shared a lot of times passwords, we've shared social security, particularly in marriages,
Mm-hmm.
we filled out our income taxes together, filed our income tax together. So he has a lot of that information. So people who use power control, they can keep those kind of things. We don't think about it. When you think you're in an honest, open, trusting relationship, you don't, think about the fact that they are storing the papers. Maybe they have better organizational skills, or so it is said, because another tactic or another form and technique of mental abuse is to mental abuse is the part of gaslighting is to make the victim survivor believe what you say the abuser says. So this person could say things like, well, you know what, I'll keep our papers, I'll file away our income tax, I'll put them where I keep our birth certificates and the kids school projects and school report cards or diplomas or whatever it is. I have a spot for all of us, so I'll keep this so that they have access to all of the information. There have been women who come through our program who don't have dental records and medical records for themselves or their kids because the person who uses abuse keeps all those kinds of records. So there's so many ways that they could get into housing. And again, I said, it makes me go, really? They can do that? But there's a way that they can get into the housing and have it in the victim's name, and the victim never even knows that it exists. Same thing obviously with credit and run up and ruin the credit as well. But I'll have to research more about what you were just saying, because I do know that in Pittsburgh and in Pennsylvania it was brought to the attention for public housing not to just evict the family due to intimate partner violence. I remember even opening this isn't housing, but opening my electric bill, my light bill, and seeing, and it's there if you read your, and it makes me smile because being on this side today, but being on this side and knowing that everyone that needs all the help and protection that they can get. So reading my electric bill and where it says, if you have a protection from abuse order, call this number. And I'm paraphrasing where it says we will work with you. Of course, it says you still have to pay your bill. However, it does say, we will work with you if you have a protection order. So those are some steps that have been taken over the years. I say over the last 10, 15, 20 years, some remarkable steps have been made to help make it safer for victims of intimate partner violence. And you know what? The next 5, 10, 15, 25 years, we still have a whole lot more to do. We have a long way to go. we still have a long way to go. So,
So let me just share that our live panel this month is going to be talking about different resources that's available. So we probably will need to include a little bit of this because one of our guests is from Philadelphia. So I definitely plan to ask her about this housing thing. And then some of the other things in the article it talked about. It says even if a survivor has the means to pick up and move immediately, often the housing they're in limits their ability to leave. And it talks about having, if you have a voucher tenant, you got to go through this process of finding a voucher, getting the landlord to approve it, and then the inspection and all that kind of stuff. So that's causing her to have to stay longer than she wants to. And you just talked about the housing. So it says a tenant who lives in public housing has to get the housing authority to sign off on their transfer, which can take years.
yeah.
Like, come on now. Project-based housing may not be able to transfer a tenant at all. Now, I don't know what project-based housing. I guess that's part of. Is that the public housing?
I would think
I
so.
think that's combined with that. Yeah. And then it says a private tenant has a little more control, but breaking the lease can be very costly and be an additional hurdle to a survivor's ability to just pick up and go. So there's a lot of reasons why people stay, and then this article also talked about that's why some women end up staying in the relationships because where are they going to go? I think I shared this on another podcast. I'm not sure, but I did a workshop many years ago, and the woman she had 6 children and no job, and she says, "Where am I going? I have no job." And I kindly let her know you can go to the Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh. They will be glad to help you. She wasn't aware of all the resources. That's why we're going to do this resource session next in a couple of weeks because people are just not aware of all the resources that are available.
Yeah.
In some cases, as much as domestic violence has been talked about over the years, people still don't know. I was trying to see if there was anything else. But in this article, by the way, it's kind of long, so there's no way I can go through all of it. But it's from HuffPost, so HuffPost.com. And the date of it is June 9th, 2021. So, and it's by Alana Vagianos, Vagianos. I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly. But it's a good article if you want to delve into it and read more. So that one I just wanted to share that.
Roxanne, I'm glad you brought up that it can be difficult to leave, and because people often say that, especially families and friends will often say, why are you still there? Why don't you leave? And
Mhm.
people don't understand that you can't always just leave. You've also brought up the point when we were touching on the impact on children. You have children enrolled in schools, and not in addition to being enrolled in school, they're enrolled oftentimes into different programs that is associated just with that school, whether it's a sporting team, whether it is the acting club, whatever club it is in that particular school that they're a part of. It's
Mhm.
not easy to just take your child. And you gave the example of 6 children. So one child, children. I was going to say 3 childs. One child, 3 children, 6 children. It's difficult to just always say, let's just up and move. And even women who have financial means to move, you don't always have the courage. And nor do women always necessarily want to break up the family. So for instance, there are families where the abuser does not physically abuse the children. And maybe in the eyes of the victim survivor, this person is a really good co-parent, whether the co-parent, whether this is a relationship with 2 moms, 2 dads, a mother or father, whatever relationship, they see their co-parent as a good co-parent. They go to school events, they take them to medical appointments. They always make sure to spend time with the children. They do all the good parenting things. So even though the survivor may have financial means to leave the relationship, they may not see an impact of intimate partner violence on the children. They may not understand or see the depths of what that does to the children if the children, particularly maybe children that are older, particular maybe these children came into the relationship with the survivor. You know, they're already 11, 13, 14 years old,
Mm.
so there's no physical violence going on. And when the violence that happens between between the adults, they believe the children are not aware. You know, because it may be a severe case of gaslighting. It may be
Mhm.
financial abuse. You know, and it may not look so obvious to the
Mhm.
children. So therefore, the co-parent, they see how good this person is to the kids, and particularly if they have already left the relationship where it was not healthy. You know, it was, maybe it was abusive, but or maybe not. Maybe it just wasn't helping. And now they're in this relationship where it really appears that this is a healthy co-parent for my child or my children. So then I'm not going to leave this relationship. You know, I think when I've done training, or when I do training, I often tell people, if we were each to take a marker, we may have 20, 30 people in the room, and I tell them, if we would take a marker and go around the room on the walls and write up reasons why somebody stay, if we really go deep within ourselves to think about why would somebody stay, we could fill the walls and
Mhm.
not necessarily ever overlap our reasons, because it's
Mhm.
that many reasons why somebody stays. Let me read this real quick. This is from 2018, and this was a public figure. Ex-Astros, Houston Astros, ex-Astros minor leaguer kicked off a Pennsylvania team after shocking video shows him assaulting the girlfriend. Then it says in all capital letters, warning, graphic video. And this was on Danny Vasquez, and it was in 2018. So that when you go to even hit the video to look at it, it tells you this video is age restricted. It can only be viewed on YouTube. You must go to YouTube. So I thought, okay, I'll look at YouTube. So you go to YouTube, and again, you have to acknowledge that it is graphic and you're willing to look at it. And I'm telling you, the abuse that they were coming out, they were in a stairwell. As soon as he closed the door to the stairwell, he slaps her. And then he punched her. And then you know what? Then he picks her glasses up, moves her hair back gently, and puts her glasses on her face for her. They walk a little more down the steps, and he backhands her into the wall. Her glasses fly off her face. He gently picks them up and puts her glasses back on her face. Then you see on the video, he's him standing with his arms behind his back, and he's talking. You can't hear it. I don't know if it was just my equipment today. I don't think there was sound. I couldn't hear anything, but you can see him then talking, and they go on down the steps again, and he hits her again and knocks her purse out of her hands. You know, he looks at her glasses. I don't know if they broke. He looks at her glasses, then he gently picks up her purse and gives it to her. I read the comments that the people were writing, that people listed, and I have to agree. Several people, several people posted the same comment. That was the first thing that crossed my mind when I watched this horrific graphic video. This woman is so accustomed to this behavior, to this level of violence. He got up and at one point, he leaves and goes out the stairwell. She brushed her hair back, took her glasses off, looked at him because this is after he put them on. Took her glasses off and looked at him. I guess she was checking to see if they were broken or whatever, and she put them back on. And when he comes back, she just goes on down the steps. She's about one or two steps ahead of him, and that's when he backhands her again, and that's when her purse flew out of her hands. You could just see from, and this is going to sound ridiculous, you could see from the calmness in this woman that she had gone through this many times before, and obviously at much worse, right? The article says she declined to press charges. Um, there's more to the article. Again, I read so many of them so in preparation. And one of the points that we're doing this for, one of the points is just Roxanne and I want to really just point out the prevalence
Mhm.
of intimate partner violence. You know, it's sad to say I never fear of not having a job because there's not enough work to do. I'll put this plea out there. We're nonprofit. I'm putting the plea out here for all nonprofits, okay? All nonprofits can always use donations. So we might lose a job because you don't have funding, or you won't lose a job because there's not enough work to do, because something different constantly happens. Like last year, a pandemic inside of a pandemic. To
Mm-hmm.
think that with everything we were already dealing with COVID-19, that we also had a pandemic of intimate partner violence, where it was made worse for victim survivors and children living with intimate partner violence. So,
So let me just you just gave me a flashback to talking about how she was just so nonchalant about this relationship or this abuse. I witnessed a toddler. I witnessed a toddler witness his parents being abusive, and that toddler didn't even flinch. I said that baby has seen this too many times, and that broke my heart. You
yeah,
know. And then also when you talking about it, I just had this flashback too, and I can't remember the younger man, the football player who beat the crap out that woman in that elevator.
yeah,
And I just thought about her when you was talking about doing this topic. I don't know why that just flashes back, and I hate that video. I can't stand looking at it. And what I hate even more is that she married him after that. And I don't know. I just in my heart, what did that man say to her to convince her? How apologetic? I mean, I don't even understand how. I mean, I know people can change and this, that, and the other, and all. Their behaviors can change, but and you work with men, and you've seen that. So, do they really, really change? To
yeah,
the point where that you can now trust this person and now be his wife. Do you see that happening?
yeah. We interviewed a few years back. We interviewed some couples who stayed together. One of the things that the victim survivors talk about is that you letting go and just beginning to trust again. And also knowing and being able to observe the difference in the person who used power and control, knowing that they are continuing to work on their issue. I know there are some, and this particular program was for men only, but I know there are some men who have participated 10, 12, 15 years in battering intervention program without any court stipulation. They're doing it because they want to continue to check themselves, and that they value the connection they have with the other men in the group, so that they can have a way to check themselves and be there to be a support for other men who are also going through that process. Roxanne, I believe anybody can change who decides they want the change.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe a court order can make somebody change. I
Mm-hmm.
don't believe a ultimatum to divorce can make somebody change. I do believe people get to the point. In my experience, when I say I do believe people can get to the point, in my experience, what often has, I say, helped the men like get to turn the corner. Okay, some people say that the light bulb goes off, so that's
Mm-hmm.
same kind of era. But they start to turn the corner oftentimes when they connect a couple things in life. One, the violence that they witnessed, the intimate partner violence that they witnessed. Two, the fact that they are now a father and they don't want their daughters to
Mm-hmm.
go through this as she gets older. And these are some men who have baby girls 10 months old, 8 months old, and they're already thinking forward that they don't want their daughter to ever go through something like that. So they begin to work on the process for change. So I do believe, you asked me, do I believe men can change? I do believe anyone who uses violence, you know why? It's a choice.
Right.
I'll just give the example. This is not something that you were born with. It's environmentally induced because of being intergenerational and living in that as a child. Again, coming back to what we one of the themes for today's topic, the impact of intimate partner violence on children. So it is intergenerational. We do know children who witness intimate partner violence have a 75% more likelihood of being a victim, survivor, or perpetrator of using abuse and power control. So we know that that's one way, but we also know that any learned behavior can be unlearned. I don't brag about it, and I usually don't even say it out loud, but I used to smoke cigarettes, and I think there was a time I didn't think that I would, be able to quit. After trying to quit several times, You
Mm-hmm.
just get to the point, well, shoot, I just smoked.
Right.
But one day I said, this is it. I'm going to quit. I'm not going to smoke anymore. And thank God I have not, and I literally mean that. Thank God I
Mm-hmm.
haven't smoked a cigarette since 1994, so you can quit and change it. And I had a habit, like back then, of course, you could smoke anywhere. So you could smoke in your office. So back then, I'm really dating myself. And my
Yeah, you
birthday's
are.
yesterday. So yeah, I'm really dating myself. Uh, However, back then, when you were writing, yes, young millennials listening, I'm talking about a pen and paper. So when I was writing a report, and my phone would ring in my office, I would automatically put my pen down and pick up a cigarette because when my phone rang, that in my mind indicated, oh, this is time to smoke a cigarette.
Mm-hmm.
So there were times that, and the point I'm making is just, it was just a habit. It was just
Mm-hmm.
things I did habitually. Am I saying abuse is a habit? No, I'm saying it was permission. See, when the phone rang, it gave me permission to smoke
Wow.
a cigarette. That's the permission I had given myself for
Mm-hmm.
years. I had given myself permission when the phone rang, smoke a cigarette. There were other times that it just was automatic. For places where you couldn't smoke. You're in church, you can't smoke in church, right?
Right.
So after church, when you get the car, light up a cigarette. Why? Because you haven't been able to smoke. So I'm not saying that. No, do not think I'm saying that smoking cigarettes and intimate part of the balance is the same thing. I am saying the permission to do something you want to do. You choose to do. You choose to do this. No one's forcing you to do it. You are choosing to do this. Then, because of that permission that you give yourself, you can also take that away and allow yourself to work the process of change. Like I had to work the process of
Mm-hmm.
changing my habit of smoking. You can work the habit of change. You can get to the point where you feel that rising up in you. I saw something today. I really, at some point, Roxanne and I may be able to include it in our podcast here. But in the meantime, if you see this, it's the number 10, 10 to 10. And it's about a hotline or helpline, and it operates 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And it is for if you feel like you're going to abuse someone. And I watched it today. It's a really good short video, but it's like an advertisement for the helpline. But it was really just showing when you're feeling that frustration. And the narrator was saying, you know when your anger is escalating. It's not like you lose control. A lot of people like to say people who use power and control, physical violence, they lost control. Even like the men who I work with, you asked about Roxanne, the men I work with, sometimes when they first come into the program, they're like, I don't know. And then all of a sudden, I just lost it. No, 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 no. I tell them, and that is just what I tell them. No, 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 no. You didn't just lose it. And I
Mm-hmm.
tell them, let's take time and break that down because you didn't just just lose it. So despite these horrific headlines that we're sharing with you, despite the heaviness of this, there's always help. There's always help and there's always hope. And there's places to go for help and for hope if you are a survivor victim. If you are a child listening to this and you are a child living in a home where you are that child that Roxanne talked about who changed schools, whose family moved 10 times in 1 year, you had to consistently change schools and you can't bond and make friends, you can call the hotline as well. And again, please listen in next week when we have our resources. So we really want you to hear and know and come prepared to however you take notes, a pen and paper, a cell phone, or however you take notes. Come prepared to take notes so you can have those resources at the end of the show. So,
Yeah. So
yeah.
I don't think I had any more to add to that, but it's just too much. I always when got into this field, I always said that I would be glad when I got put out of work. Put me out of work. I'll find another job. And it just hasn't happened yet. That was in what 1999, I think I started my first program. Yeah,
Yeah.
1999. And
Yeah.
it's still at it. It seems to me that it's getting worse. I don't. I maybe we're hearing about it more. Maybe it's just always been to this level, and we're just because of social media and just the media outlets, we're just hearing about it more. What do you think? You think it's that it's always just been there, or incidence is increasing? I don't know.
Yeah, I think because of social media devices that we use that can immediately show things nowadays. Yeah, I think we just see it. We visually and physically see it a lot more than we did in 1967, 1977. But,
Mm-hmm.
uh, we have more programs now that also record more statistical information. And so I think we know more now than we knew before. So.
Yeah, maybe I'll come up with some type of data sheet for to distribute next week. People can email us, and I'll have some type of sheet with some other resources other than what the presenters are going to present. I think we have some dynamic speakers coming on next week. I'm not going to share who they are right now. Just join us.
Yes.
We have a national speaker, one in two Pennsylvania, one from Philadelphia, and this is a gentleman. He's here in Pittsburgh, right?
Yes.
Hmm. And even though they might be talking about, some of them might be talking about the local resources. These type of resources, I'm sure, are available within your states as well, and we'll give you resources on how to find them. But, yeah. You got anything else?
I just want to thank you again for listening to our listeners. Thank you, Roxanne. People, Roxanne and I talk about this all the time. It is, a lot of people say, "What's your passion?"
Mm.
It's, it's our passion, but it's our heart's desire to see people get help, to see people change. So yes, you can say it's a passion, but it's more than a passion. We live it. We
Yeah,
live with knowing that there's ways to survive, to exit, and to be healthy and whole. And you deserve it.
and,
You
and, and that's
deserve
why this podcast was started. Rhonda and I have done several workshops together here in Pittsburgh, and I always tell people she's coming from the educational perspective, and I'm coming from the survivor's perspective. And I'm in this program now where I'm learning how to do pitching and some other things to help grow my business. And this woman, who's her name is Forbes Riley. If any of you ever heard of her, she's just like the pitch queen, they call her. I believe that's what her name is, whatever. She's worked with Les Brown and a whole bunch of people that people know, right? But I said something like at the beginning of my pitch, which was horrible, but I'll get better at it. I said something like, "I'm a survivor." She stopped me. She would not let me say survivor. She said, "That's bullshit. There ain't no such thing as no survivors or victims." And so I'm like, "Well, what word should I use?" And we got distracted. So when I went back and I had to do another little pitch, and I said, as someone who has experienced domestic violence and sexual assault, she said, and she cut me off again, and she told the class, she said, "Roxanne heard me say you're not survivors, so that's where she's getting that from." Because I stopped myself because I was ready to say survivors, I like that better. It's someone who has experienced these types of abuses. And then I've heard people say they're not using the terminology survivor anymore. A lot of people hate that word. I still don't know why, but to each his own. They prefer thriver, you know. So then I was like survivor/thriver. So now I can't even. And the language just keeps changing I guess the more we learn about it, and like if the people don't want to be called survivors, then that's not what I'm gonna call them on the show. We're gonna respect their wishes or whatever. Even though I don't quite understand it, I'm okay with it, and I have no problem saying that as someone who has experience. And I'm like, I like that. I kind of like that. But and I'll just share real quick. I was talking. We was talking about um, can men change? I had a conversation with a gentleman, and I asked him would he give me a quote to put in my book. I don't know if he gets chickened out or what, but he didn't do it. I chased him down. I got tired of chasing him, but he used to be an abuser, and he was talking about how he's not that person anymore. So I really wanted to get into it. It would be nice if I could get him. I'm gonna see if I can get him to be on the podcast, because I really would like to hear from somebody who used to be one who abuses and now they're not doing it anymore. I think that would be a powerful message to some men who are currently involved. Now, I know your program that you work with is confidential and all of that, but do you think that maybe if any of the men in the program, once they're out of it, do you think maybe we could get one of them to come on and be a guest?
I'll say a couple things to respond to that. One thing I will say, we don't use the words like graduated. We say completed the program. So my hesitancy would only be in if I haven't talked to their current partner. I don't, I'm hesitant.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Did
ask
you
me, do I
really
believe I
change?
change? Yeah, I do believe they change. And
Hmm.
I also would not want to bring somebody on who, in his own walk, thinks he's a little further than he really is at that moment in time. And his partner may still be living with fear of some sort. So I'm not going to say no, but I would say I would do a lot of research. And
Hmm.
even if it's not for my program, but somebody in my own walk of life that I know, that I would think about. I think we could think. I think it would be a great show, and I think there are men out there who could do it. So we can put that plea out there, that call out there.
Yeah,
Maybe we
yeah.
can come up with an assessment or interview we do, survey or interview that we would do beforehand. So yeah.
And I'll just share with you another topic that's coming up. Rhonda and I, we wanted to speak with someone who's experienced human trafficking. And I was at a conference this weekend and I found several people who are going to be willing to speak to us about that topic, that horrific topic. So that's another one. It won't be pretty, but it's real. And I want to talk to them because the one lady, I went to her website and the first thing I noticed is she's talking about how people don't believe them when they say they've been trafficked. I'm like, what? Who would make up something like that? So I really want to talk to them and hear their take on all of that and what they've experienced. And so yeah. So I think is it time for us to say bye?
I think we've come to a natural close again this week.
Okay. Well, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, we're trying to build a community, and you'll be hearing about it shortly. We're going to be moving we have a group, we call it Warriors, the Healing Space Warriors, and we want to build this community of like-minded women who've experienced domestic violence, sexual assault, and just have a community where we support each other, or you need support, you can have an accountability partner. I heard one woman say to me that she's addicted to her abuser or the person who abused her. That's why she keeps going back. Maybe we could come up with something like I don't know. This is off the top of my head. That she has accountability anytime she feels like feeling that way, like that 10 to 10 thing you was talking about. She could call her accountability partner, and hopefully stop her from going back to this person. So just send us an email to info@warheals, and that's info@WAARHEALS.org if you would like to become a part of our private community. And with that, I'm just going to say thank you guys for listening. I enjoyed listening to my girl because she's just so knowledgeable. I just learned so much from her, even though I'm in the field as well. Like I said, I'm coming from a survivor's perspective, and I just learned so much from her. So I appreciate you, Rhonda. And with that, we'll just do
I will closing.
our closing, and it's called "We
We got
Got
your.
Your Back." Hey, I think it worked this time, Rhonda. We haven't. So on that note, we're going to say goodbye and thank you guys. We'll see you on the 29th. I think is our next session. I don't even know what date this is right now. So hopefully you'll be able to join us for our live panel discussion. And you'll, some of you, I have your emails. I'll send it to you. If I don't have your email and you're hearing this, send me an email saying you would like to be invited to the podcast. Thank you so much.
Here are two things we would like you to do. Number one, enter our monthly drawing by sending your email address to info@warheals.org. Spelled out, that is info@WARHEALS.org. Put drawing in the subject line. We will notify the winner or winners via email by midnight on the last Thursday of each month. Our second request, Engage with us on IG. Follow, like, and subscribe to all of our social media platforms at WarHeals_ on IG, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. WAARHEALS_ on IG, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. As always, we thank you for listening and see you next week.